Hi, it's Jonathan. I'm in our Fleetwood factory. Going to talk about cutting lathes and the direct drive turntables that OMA makes. So this is a substantial part of the Neumann. I think it's a VMS 70, maybe 60. This is a Neumann cutting lathe. The platter and chassis cowling. This is actually our K5 direct drive turntable. It's brand new. It's not, I guess it is out. And K3 is being built. Actually, there's an SP10 direct drive system going out to a client. These are all direct drive turntables or turntable systems that we have engineered from the ground up. And this is simply the most important piece of machine in all of analog because any record made in the last 65, 70 years was probably cut on a Neumann lathe or a Scully lathe. But there are more Neumann lathes out there by far. It is the workhorse today of all vinyl that's being produced because you have to cut a lacquer master to make a record, and it's done on this machine. Why is this here? Is an interesting question. In other videos I've talked about, and with Richard Krebs in our interviews, in fact, all told, I think at this point there's like at least 3, maybe 4 hours of all content videos, me talking about K3, Richard Krebs and I having conversations 3 days running at the Munich High-End Show in 2023. You can find these on our YouTube channel. About 4 hours of content about the how and why we made the K3 and K5 decks. But it really stems from this machine, from cutting lathes. And the reason this is here, it was kindly lent to us by one of the world's top engineers for restoring, fixing these machines, Chris Muth. Thank you, Chris. And it's a very interesting reason, and we've discussed this a little bit if you've been following the videos in the conversation with Richard on Munich. We're sending this down to Richard in New Zealand because we are going to produce our own motor for the Neumann cutting lathe system. And I thought it'd be interesting before we ship this down to show you a little bit about how this actually works and where our motor fits in. So you can see pictures online of a complete Neumann lathe and how they work in action. This is the sled where the cutting arm comes over and down and then moves in and cuts the groove. So that we don't need this because we're not re-engineering that part of the cutting lathe system. There is this section here, which is quite interesting. If you see, there's springs here that hold this disc in relation to this column, and you see the play. There's even little rubber bumpers. This is to mitigate the cogging of the original Lyric and all the motors, actually. The original motor was the Lyric motor. Then Techniques made a very special add-on motor, the SPO2 motor, and then there's finally the VMS 80 motor. This doesn't exist on that version, but they all cog, and our motor doesn't cog at all. So that's one way in which our motor will be a huge upgrade, we believe, all of us believe, including Mr. Muth. So right here, this play between these two elements, we can eliminate that. This primary platter is made out of bronze. Sean, let's see if we can lift this on without hurting anything. There's an index mark. We don't need to follow that. Okay. This weighs nearly 100 pounds itself. We will be making our own version of this. This is the mass needed to keep speed stability in the system because the motor isn't as powerful as our motor. This is very interesting. This is an incredible piece of engineering. This is the vacuum hold down over platter that fits on top of the under platter. So this assembly constitutes the platter moving system for the Neumann lathe, and we will be providing our own motor, which would be situated here. The original Lathe motor has a long drive shaft with numerous decoupling elements, again to keep vibrations out of the system. With our motor, we can eliminate all of that, which is a huge plus. So I think it's really interesting to understand that, you know, the reason our turntables look the way they do is because they're really working off of this engineering model. They're not designed to attract consumers based upon silly, blingy things that are added onto the turntable that have no relationship to function. And more importantly, I think, is that if we're successful and we create the most powerful motor ever used on a cutting lathe and replace these elements from the Neumann system that were brilliantly engineered but have been rendered kind of obsolete by current motor technology, we can potentially improve the sound quality of all new records that were made on machines that we retrofit with a new motor, with our motor, which means that you might in the next few years start to see, actually to hear records that sound far superior, and you might be wondering, oh, how did records get better? And the answer would be they got better because the OMA K series turntable motors has been, created for the Neumann system.